Well, hello. It's time for another exciting episode of Pens in Use. This is the show where I talk about the fountain pens and inks I've been using throughout the week. So, let's dive into it. If videos like this interest you, where I talk about fountain pens both new and old, and at all price points, I would invite you to subscribe. And I've got a couple little topics we're going to talk about at the end. Big one I'm just going to cite. Holiday lights are down, finally! I got some box flaps from a colleague. I was finally able to wrap them up and take them down, so that's probably the most exciting thing going on in my life right now, because that's how I roll. But we're going to revisit Hettinger, North Dakota. I'm going to briefly talk about too many fountain pens. And we're going to talk about a couple serious topics. And we'll wrap it up with a little bit about social media and cell phones. So, comment on any of the above. So, let's take a look at some pens. These are the pens I've been using this week. So, from left to right, I have the Kaweco Perkeo, Platinum Procyon, Noodler's Konrad, Omas Ogiva, Platinum Izumo, Pilot Custom 823, a vintage, we're low on the vintage this week, a vintage Aurora 88, and a Parker Frontier. As always, I'll be doing my writing sample in this cognitive surplus seafood flavored journal. I was told I should call it Deep Sea Creatures, but you know what? I like my seafood flavored journal. So my first pen is this Kaweco Perkeo. This is a nice little pen that I bought, made out of two other Perkeos. One had a black body and a pink lid. The other one had a green body and a black lid. So this was the winning combination. I think it turned out very well. A complaint I had when I did a video on it this week was about the ink would not let air bubbles go past this point, and so it would just write itself dry. But as you can see, with this ink it doesn't have a problem. I don't know, there are just certain inks that seem to cause that in pens with a very narrow space for the bubbles to rise through. Now, so this pen has not had trouble with ink starvation since I put this new ink in it. One thing I will say is I still want the nib off of the other Kaweco Perkeo, so we'll see how much of a process it is. When I get this emptied out, I'm probably going to try a little nibectomy. That is not the name of the ink. But anyway, we'll see how that goes. This ink, I think, has some better surfactants in it that reduce the surface tension of the ink. Very nice color. This one can be a goofy one for drying. You know, I had some paper where I ran my finger over it a day or two later, and ooh, it smeared. Other papers it did not. So this ink has some weird properties of its own. But, it's pretty. Oops, I'm trying to cap the wrong end. So let's see here. Yeah, see, on this paper it's fine. I can smear the Kaweco all I want and nothing happens. So I've mentioned before that I've been using several different daily writer type pens. This is my daily writer for the moment. This is a Platinum Procyon, which I think comes in a very attractive finish. It's an attractive pen. I'd kind of forgotten how well I liked this pen. So that's been a nice thing with this whole process, is discovering, especially some of the less expensive pens that I really like that I just don't ink up. So I'm wondering if there's a way to incorporate them into my pen flow. Maybe it's pens like this that I take to school. One drawback to this particular one is it's a screw cap, but on the other hand, it doesn't take much unscrewing to open it. So, horse apiece. I did end up giving my Kaweco... No, sorry. Not Kaweco Perkeo. Which pen was it? My Pelikan Stola 3 away to somebody who really liked it. And has been using it daily since then, so... Kind of hard to give that pen up, but I think it's in a good home that's going to use it more than I do, so... Yay! I think that's a win. This is my Noodler's Konrad. By the way, I'm trying an experiment with my lighting. I think my exposure's a little low, so let's just see if I can dial that up a little. But I'm trying to have less shadow, and I think it was working. Oh yeah, that's a little better. Maybe that's too much. There, that'll work. Oh. Do it all over again. Doggone. Okay. There. Finally stayed. So, anyway, this is a Noodler's Konrad in the Forbidden City finish. I think this pen is absolutely gorgeous. I don't care what you think of Noodler's. I think this pen is gorgeous. Oh, yeah, that doesn't work as lighting. Yipe! But anyway, so we'll have to work on this part of the lighting, yeah? But it has a Stipula nib on it. Let's just go back to automatic exposure, maybe. Yowzer! So anyway, it has a Stipula nib on it, a T-flex, and I think it writes beautifully in this pen. So the pen is better, the nib actually works, it's just a win-win all around, except the Stipula pen it came in was kind of expensive. But nice combination. The ink in this one is, I'm almost out of it. It's Rohrer and Klingner. We'll just do R and K. Blue Mare. So that's sea blue. I'm enjoying working my way through the different color families in my ink collection. And I am this ink and two others away from using up all the inks in this particular color family that I'm loosely calling turquoise. I think it's very attractive. This one might well be the winner out of the bunch. We'll see. But I'm pretty sure this is the winner. Rohrer and Klingner inks have been very pleasant. Oops, that sounded worse than it was because it landed right beside the microphone. So this is the lovely Omas Ogiva. I am told that Omas has been revived, and their new line of pens is called the Ogiva. So I wonder if it is as wonderful as this one. I haven't heard much or seen much about them yet, but I'm also not a fountain pen guy that spends a lot of time following new pens. So, yeah. I am thinking before I run through this fill that this pen is long past due a revisit. So maybe expect that to come. I have a discontinued ink and a discontinued pen. That would be cool if Omas is back. They used to make some very nice pens. There was a lot of hand manufacturing involved in their making. They made some very striking finishes. I love this demonstrator finish. They made a very famous kind of a brown celluloid, Arco celluloid that was very striking with its contrasting chatoyancy. Never bought one. I don't know if I would, especially at the prices they command now, but were very striking in their day. Okay, this, oh yeah, putting it on my hands helped with the exposure. So maybe I can just learn to work with auto exposure. This is a platinum Izumo. This is a pen you bought me with the channel income. I had Dan Smith, the Nib Smith, grind it to a cursive italic. That was a double broad nib, which Platinum calls a coarse. It's also almost empty, so if it struggles with writing, that would be why. So this is a Platinum Procyon, a coarse with a cursive italic. And the ink in it is Krishna, Writer's Night. I talked a little last week about how evocative that name is. I'm not a night person, but I'll tell you what, in the summer when there's a storm brewing up, nice storm with lots of thunder and lightning, one of my favorite places to be in my house, even if it's late, is in my kitchen by the open window. As long as, rain's not coming in through the open window. Just enjoying the night and doing some writing. My parents, I try to respect their privacy, of course, but I don't think I'm giving anything away here, have a porch that I think would be wonderful for that. It's deep enough that you're sheltered from all but the most horizontal of storms. I think that would be a very cool place to be during a powerful thunderstorm. This is a Pilot Custom 823 with a broad nib. It's in the smoke finish, so it almost looks like a black pen, but it isn't. It's a demonstrator. Of course, we have to unscrew the end because it's a vac filler, and it has a broad nib. So we got a Pilot Custom 823. And look how well this expresses this ink. The last pen I had this in, it looked almost black, but here you can really see that it's brown with some shading. The ink in it, of course, is Pelikan Edelstein, so it's their expensive range. Smoky Quartz. Just a beautiful brown. Discontinued, it's one of their special edition colors. On a kind of side note, you're going to see Edelstein Onyx appearing in my daily writer pen after I use up that Montblanc black. That's my next one. That's a pretty full bottle, so I think the Lamy 2000 is going to make its triumphant return for that ink. So I like my vintage pens. This is a particular favorite vintage pen. This is a Aurora 88. The body is made out of celluloid. The finial and the section are made out of ebonite. Not the finial, the blind cap. The blind cap has faded a little bit with the sun. The celluloid reacted differently, and of course the section didn't see the sun. This pen appeared in the 1940s. It was manufactured in various iterations into the 1970s. The later ones looked a little different, but it kept the same basic idea. And then it was revived, I'm not sure when, but the modern revival of the Aurora 88 is quite a different pen. But I love these original versions. I think they're wonderful. I own 2 of them, and I keep having to talk myself out of getting another one. I had a viewer email me, I won't mention names or anything, but asked me, he apparently was writing with it, broke one of the tines off. I don't know how to fix that. The advice, which I'm going to send him, and I haven't sent it yet, is look on the used market for either a vintage nib or buy a junker pen and steal the nib out of it, because I don't know what else to do. So the ink is Rohrer and Klingner Alt-goldgrün. A couple of years ago I did a video. It wasn't on this pen. It was on a Russian pen, actually, Soviet. So it was from the Soviet era, probably the 1970s. I was very happy with it. It was a lot like a Parker 51. I'm just writing away happily with it for days and days, because back then I didn't do first impressions. I only did reviews. And then one day I sit down to write with it, and boink! One of the tines just snapped off. And yeah, good luck finding parts for an old Soviet pen. One piece of advice I was given is that, depending on how bad, maybe you can grind it down. It'll be a stub with no tipping, but that's about the only help for your nib. I'm almost out of this ink, this Alt-goldgrün. I think it's a beautiful color. I have one other green that's kind of like it. It's Krishna Gat Green. So, when I use up this bottle, I'll probably use that next. But I'm pretty sure I'll be buying a bottle of this soon, because the Krishna inks don't come in very big bottles. All right, my last pen for the night is a Parker Frontier. So when I moved out on my own in North Dakota, I found a Parker Frontier for sale in a Walmart. It wasn't like this. It had a plastic body, a plastic barrel that was kind of a mottled red and black finish, and then a metal cap, and then the section was rubberized. So I think this pen is better, if for no other reason than the fact that it's a solid plastic section, not rubberized, because I don't know, me and rubberized grips don't get along. Rubberized grips just seem to turn to mush. It must be something about my body chemistry. But anyway, this is a Parker Frontier. As you can see, it is laying down a lovely line. I enjoy this pen. This is a fine, but Parker's always right on the broad side. The ink in it is Lamy bronze, purchased here in North Dakota. Yes, we do have not dedicated fountain pen stores, but a store that has a section of fountain pens. It's called Zambros, and it's in Fargo, North Dakota. So if you're ever in Fargo, check out Zambros. If you're ever in South Dakota, go to Sioux Falls. There's a Zambros in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And make sure you visit the park and look at the falls while you're in Sioux Falls. One of these days, I will get to Sioux Falls again. We'll do a driving video or pens on the road or something. But anyway, those are the pens and inks that I've been using this week. And I think keeping it down to 8 has worked very nicely. Nice variety of colors there. We got bright, we got dim. It's just a little bit of everything for everybody. So those are the pens and inks I've been using this week. I've been keeping the number small. I like 8. It seems like a comfortable number. You're ending up with some repeats, but oh well. I like the repeats, especially if I refill one, which I didn't, but sometimes that's kind of nice too. So if I didn't mention it before, the holiday lights are down behind me and over here, and it's wonderful. The reason they're down, over the Christmas holiday, I had cleaned the living room, and I thought, what are these flaps of cardboard for? Throw them away. Well, after the holidays, I was cleaning up, and got to take the lights down, and then I remembered the box flaps, and oh yeah. So I always wrap the lights around them, because then they don't turn into a horrible, tangled, snarled mess over the summer. And so I left them up. It is now almost April. In fact, tomorrow, as I film this tomorrow, it will be April. And the lights were still up. So almost the end of March, the lights were still up. I didn't order anything online. I had no cardboard boxes at home. But then a colleague of mine happened to get a shipment, and I just said, hey, can I have your flaps from your box? And, took the lights down. Feels good. Somebody like me, it does bother me to have them up. So, I'm happy to have them down. So, exciting. My neighboring town, I took you on a Pens on the Road 2 years ago. I think it was the year of the masks, when everybody was wearing masks due to COVID. I took you over to Hettinger, North Dakota. Train came through there while I was in Hettinger. I filmed it briefly. I did a Pens on the Road. And so this week there was a train derailment in Hettinger. And it reminds you of the power and the weight and the mass that is in those things. Some of them are just kind of tipped over. Some of them are partly tipped over. And then there's the one that just kind of got thrown through a building. And it just reminds you of, holy cow, these things are big. So I attached an article from K-Fire TV, North Dakota channel. Anyway, that shows some photos of the railroad damage. So check that out if you're interested in that kind of thing. I also attached my Pens on the Road visit to Hettinger, North Dakota, so you can remind yourself what the town's like. It's a little smaller than my town, but pretty comparable in a lot of ways. Had a more serious topic. Not sure how much I want to talk about it right now, but I have mentioned some of the interesting bills going through our legislature here in North Dakota. It's a red state, so what do you expect? But I've been shocked and disappointed how seriously some of these bills are being taken by people who you would think would know better. One of them was a bill requiring certain types of pronoun usage in schools and other government institutions. And I just thought, can't we decide that locally? And I'm happy to say that our governor agreed with me. I will be honest, I never voted for Governor Doug Burgum. But I like the man. He's intelligent. He's actually thoughtful. I don't always agree with him. A lot of times I don't agree with him, but he is intelligent and thoughtful. He understands people. He's actually a very tolerant man. And he vetoed this most recent bill. I think he recognized, what is the role of government? When is government stepping from doing its job to overstepping and imposing a viewpoint on others? And that's what this stupid bill did. And so I was glad to see he vetoed it. So far, the Senate overrode his veto. We'll see what the House does. A lot of people think that the numbers aren't there to override the veto in the House, and I hope so. I'm counting on the House to be the one that sees reason with a couple other bills that are coming in the legislature. But, the way that the governor and I can agree on a lot of areas is that we both believe in personal freedom and big government not imposing its views on people. We may have different views, but the thing the governor and I can agree on is that we shouldn't be imposing those views. I'm a big believer in freedom. And as far as I can tell, he is as well. I am not really articulate at this kind of thing, so the link I provided down below in the video description is from a man named Bo, who lives in Florida, which if you want a governor who does believe in using the power of big government to impose his views, especially as an attempt to run for president, check out Florida's governor. You're going to be hearing a lot about Florida's governor when my book banning video comes out tomorrow. Not tomorrow, Sunday. I am finalizing the script. Wildly enough, this week, new stuff got added because events just keep piling up that make me say, oh, I thought it couldn't get worse. Guess it can. So, anyway, very happy that the governor did that. It doesn't affect me at all. Except it does. I'm a teacher. I have students who are transgender. And in a small rural town like mine, they don't dare let anybody know. They have to wait till they've moved far, far away to be their true selves. And if they were to ever try to admit who they are here, the hell they would live for the rest of their high school years would be unbearable. And we don't need government adding to that kind of hateful culture. So, thank you, Governor Burgum, for standing for small government. On that topic, I think it is worth noting, I've had some comment over the years about when I bring up these serious topics, how serious should I get in pens and use? I felt on reflection a couple of weeks ago, I liked my comments that I made on the Montana science bill about teaching science and only teaching facts, but I wondered if it belonged in pens and use. How serious is too serious? What belongs in pens and use? I have been kicking around for almost a year a really serious video about violence in schools. It is probably too personal to me yet to talk about, but you might remember that last spring at the end of school I had some trouble and took some time off from the channel because I was so disturbed by some things that had happened. And it's a topic that really still bothers me, and I just think I'd like to talk about it, but then I think, does it belong in pens and use? Probably not. I don't think in retrospect that Montana thing belonged in pens and use either. I do have other avenues on this channel for more serious topics because I don't just do fountain pens, even though, that's the advice you have is stick to what you know or stick to your one topic. And, people don't want to be, wonder what's going to be on this channel next. But I have driving videos where, North Dakota footage runs in the background, or sometimes South Dakota. I got to get some Montana and Wyoming footage into it too, maybe this summer. But anyway, those I'll explore more serious topics. And I wonder, I'm not sure where the line is. I'm comfortable with the idea that there's gray. The amount of things I've had to say about book banning, I think I'm glad I made them separate videos from the pens and use. Because, yeah, more people will watch pens and use, but at the same time, I guess I get more views that way, so I'm not sure where I'm at with that. But there's a gray area, but there's definitely topics that belong not in pens and use, and topics that, okay, we'll talk about it. Like, I don't feel that the pronoun thing, to the depth I delved into it tonight, is a driving video, but on the other hand, a few weeks ago, even though it was good and I had a lot of people agreeing with me, I really think that, in retrospect, that the Montana science bill deserved its own video. Standalone. So, one of those things I've just got to work on. Kind of finding my way. And another topic or another avenue that I have are my book reviews. I haven't done book reviews in a little while. This book banning thing kind of took over, and if you saw the amount of reading and editing that I do with what I've done with these book review or these book banning videos, you'd understand why I just haven't gotten a book review out. But after the book banning thing is over, I'm going to take a couple of weeks and just do some light, fluffy book reviews, maybe one or two heavy ones. I want to do an overview of Wheel of Time. And then through the coming year, I want to just start exploring each individual book in Wheel of Time, but spread it out so we're not doing, seriously, 14 videos in a row of the books that are in Wheel of Time, because that's too much. No, I did the Hyperion series 4 books in a row, but 14, gotta get something else in here, or otherwise this is the Wheel of Time channel, and it's not going to be that. But, on the other hand, I read some serious books. I'd like to talk about them, and it's another avenue to hit on serious topics. So, always juggling. Fountain pens are the background or backbone of the channel, but I always think pen people are people who are open to ideas, even if they don't agree with them. Pen people are people who can entertain an idea, not necessarily take it on. Pen people are analytical, intelligent people. Or, so I like to think. So, I guess... I don't want to go too far on a pen video. I'd like to know that. On the other hand, why not go far on a driving video? So let me know what you think down the channel. So let's close this with somewhat lighter topics. One topic I just wanted to mention, Hemingway Jones did a video this week, linked down below, where he talked about large collections of fountain pens. And he talked about how many he keeps inked, and I just thought, yipe! I don't keep a lot of pens inked. Unless you count pens that really need to get cleaned out, then sometimes, like the last 2 months have been really busy. I have a lot of pens that just need to be cleaned, but they're written dry. But I don't keep a lot of pens inked. And lately I've been keeping it down around 8. Sometimes there's a few more because I film some videos, and... I'll have 3 or 4 that are inked with Parker Quink washable blue that you don't see on the channel because I did a video on them. But I try to keep it down. And if I get too many of them, then I might do a Survivor Pens video or two where I get to ink it up with something that's not Parker Quink washable blue, and I can show on pens in use. So, but yeah, that was one of the things that struck me there. And then the other one, what do you use every day? This spring, you're going, as you saw, I've been doing different daily writers. Until I get that Montblanc black written dry, I'm going to have a lot of different pens. I'm going to settle on 1 or 2 after I get that bottle written dry, because I've got a huge bottle of Omas black. I've got a huge bottle of several different black inks yet to use up, so I'm just trying to get my inks used up, and black is an easy target because I usually use several bottles a year of black ink. So anyway, it was worth watching, if for no other reason than the reassurance that, okay, I'm not keeping that many pens inked all at once, because I'd have trouble keeping straight what was in each one. Why have so many pens? Good question. I have a lot of pens. I have a lot of pens that don't work because they need to be repaired. It's not over here. Thanks to my colleague that showed me those nice goggles, I'm going to get back into doing the pen repair videos again. But why have so many pens? I don't know, because I like them. We all spend money on different things. I might look at your house and say, look at all those snowmobiles. Or ATVs. Or, you got a big boat. I don't spend money on those things. I spend money on what I like. I like pens, so that's what I buy. So, I'm going to edit a pause out of here. If you heard the beep, I'm cooking bread because I haven't bought bread at the store since October of 2022. I make my own bread, and a loaf just got done. So I'm going to take it out. I'll be back, and I'll edit out the pause.
A few minutes later.
So anyway, as I was saying, we all have our different ways we spend money. Maybe you collect watches. Maybe you collect precious moments sculptures. I briefly dated someone who enjoyed trying different restaurants. I like trying new food. I like going to restaurants, but I don't like doing it very often. I'm somebody who is happy to sit at home and just eat a home cooked meal or a sandwich. We all have our areas that we spend money, and pens is mine, and books is another one. The one bookshelf you see behind me, barely peeking over my shoulder, is just a tiny hint of my book hoarding problem. So, what I've learned is don't judge other people for how they spend their money. It's none of your business. If it's making them happy and it's not hurting anybody and not hurting them, whatever. It's what makes them them. And I know people think spending money on fountain pens is stupid, but okay, I guess you don't spend money on anything anybody else would think is stupid, right? So, enjoy your large collection. And speaking of that, we are a social species. That's how we evolved. So, that approval of other human beings is important to us. Social media has taken that to new heights. So I was watching Teo Yiche's, I probably mispronounced that, but I put the link down below. He did a video on how artists should respond to social media. And social media is that whole thing of keeping up with the Joneses, worrying about what your neighbor thinks, worrying about what your friends think, worrying about what others thinks. Only writ large, taken to extremes, on testosterone or steroids or whatever, you want to say. Social media is by nature very addictive. And he pointed out that there are artists, because art is his focus. He talks about fountain pens, but art is his real focus. There are artists who focus on that social media thing, getting those likes, having that good social media presence. And he concedes that it can help. But I think he made a good point. The larger point was that it can really cripple an artist's creativity as they focus on the likes rather than their passion and their art. And so, circling back a little bit to more serious topics, I know it turns some of my viewers off. But that's my passion. I have my interests. This is not a business. If I don't enjoy doing this, I'm not going to do it. And that ultimately should be the most important thing. The artist should be doing art that they want to do. This isn't high-class art. This isn't painting. This isn't poetry. But it's a creative expression. And I'll respond a little bit to audience when they'll say things like, "Ooh, yeah, you're lighting, yikes," or "You just kind of rambled there." I get that. I think any good creative person should be able to respond to criticism. But on the other hand, there is the just seeking approval and following the approval and the likes. And you end up with just pablum because you don't want to offend anybody, because you get dislikes when you offend somebody. If you were offended by my pronoun comments earlier, oh well, that's my view. You don't like it? Figure out how to deal with it. But at the same time, I do recognize that time and place, and is pens in use a good time for a really serious issue, a long, in-depth analysis of it? Probably not. But North Dakota is sort of my brand, so when I go visit a small town, I think that's appropriate use of pens in use. When I have something that's happened in North Dakota, like the train derailment in Hettinger, North Dakota. I think that's a good use of pens and use. If I just want to mention something and talk briefly about it, that's okay, because this is the chatty part of pens and use. You get to see the pens, and then you can stick around for the rest, or leave if you don't like it. So I'm sounding really bitter and angry. And my last topic isn't going to help. So when I started teaching, long, long ago, these were not in the classroom. Back then, these were not that small. They were much bigger. You couldn't really hide them in your pocket or under your desk. And it was not like you had cell phone reception anyway, most of the places I lived, because I've always lived somewhere rural. But I remember when they started to appear, and what a distraction they were. And back then it was just texting. And they were flip phones where you had to press one button 3 times to get a certain letter when you texted. Clunky, awful things. And so addictive. Kids had little tricks like, we're going to use a really super high-pitched ringtone because the teacher can't hear it because the teacher's old. Well, I was young back then, but, you lose the ability to hear higher pitches when you're older. Vibrate wasn't a thing back then. And they have moved more and more in to the point that I don't think kids even realize how distracted they are by them. Having them, and then it's this constant pick it up and check things. That's why a lot of schools, including my own, are looking at an outright ban of the things. Who knows what'll happen, but to see students absolutely crippled by them, totally unable to talk to each other because of this thing. And of course, this thing brings so much drama right into their homes. I went to school with some assholes. We all did. Those assholes couldn't come home with me. Thanks to this, they can come home with you now. I just think we as a culture have allowed these things to take over. And we've allowed it for the adults in our culture, too. We have allowed the adults to, as adults, we've allowed ourselves to get addicted. I'm talking to people, I know I get distracted by all those notifications. Turn them off! So, little brag here. Humble brag, I guess. With my 7th graders, one day, we just had a few minutes at the end of class, so I had them take these out, and I just, we talked a little bit about how much time have you spent on this on average, because most of these will do a time report. I'm happy to say mine was at an average of 6 minutes a day. Some students were, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, 8 hours, 9 hours. You're wasting your life if you're spending it on this thing. Go talk to a human being. But it was eye-opening. I've done that once or twice with some other classes when we have a few minutes. Just to get an idea that how much time are you spending. Like, TikTok is one where you just go, floop, floop, floop. You flip through these pointless 1-minute videos that are all just, we're doing a fancy dance move. Jiggity, jiggity. Why? And the drama, I can't lose my streak. Okay, whatever streak is. When we went streaking when I was a kid, it involved a lot more risk than taking a picture on a cell phone. But the other interesting thing is my students, the juniors and seniors, every year the legislature is in session in North Dakota. All the schools in North Dakota go to the legislature to watch for a day. So the juniors went one day, the seniors went another. My school is big enough that we had to send them separate days. But they did come back quite disillusioned, realizing that legislators aren't paying attention to each other. Somebody does a good speech. Nobody's listening. They're on their cell phones. They're not paying attention. They're talking to each other. The rudeness that us teachers put up with every day. And, the kids were very disappointed by that, very disillusioned. I was talking to some older people who remember kids being disillusioned by legislators reading the newspaper while speeches are being made and decisions are being made. I remember there were students disappointed to discover that some legislators didn't really care how they voted. Just whatever, vote however. I don't know, I'll figure it out when I come to it. It's eye-opening. And you always hope that maybe they will apply some of that to themselves and say, oh, is this how I'm coming across as a student? When, the teacher has me put my cell phone away, but I keep flipping it up to look at the screen real quick. Yeah, that's how you're coming across. You're telling me I don't give a rip. I remember, I don't want to mention names, but I had a discussion with a parent and her son. And she was upset with her son because of some of what was going on in the classroom. Again, not going to be specific because it's private. But what disturbed me is the whole time she's talking to her son, he's got his cell phone out and he's like flipping through things on his cell phone. And I just wanted to reach out and strangle him and her because I just thought, look, lady, look, this is the problem. This is your son doing it to you and you don't care. But, I can't parent for them. And who knows, if I had a kid, maybe my kid would be a cell phone addict. I have the numbers on here to prove that I am not a cell phone addict, but I probably an addict of other things. But anyway, just kind of interesting and scary. And, if your local school is looking at a cell phone ban, know that there's a reason, because what schools are discovering nationwide is that kids are too immature for how addictive these things have been made. So, that's a pleasant thought to end it on, right? So, if videos like this interest you, I talk about fountain pens, both new and old, and at all price points, I would invite you to subscribe. And hey, how addicted to your cell phone are you? How many hours or minutes do you spend on it every day? Or maybe you're one of those who doesn't own one. I was in my 40s before I bought this one. I kind of had to because I needed it for my job, because taking students on the road, not very often, but I did take them on the road, so I needed a phone. If you still don't have one, good for you. I wish I was there. On the other hand, I'm happy to say that, and my parents are probably not happy to say that they've had that experience where they called me on the phone, because I don't have a landline anymore, because I thought, let's save some money, and discover that battery's dead on my cell phone because I haven't thought about it in a few days. Maybe you're like that. I don't know. But anyway, leave a comment down below. Maybe you have ideas about the seriousness of things I should bring up in pens and use. Maybe it should all be fountain pen, happy, fluffy, joy stuff. Let us know. So, well, thank you for watching. Look forward to the book ban video coming soon. I gotta work Missouri into it, but we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.